All right, everyone, welcome back.
Welcome back
to episode 2 of The State of Freight. I'm Spencer.
I'm Carl.
And we're your dynamic duo.
Batman and Robin.
Yeah, there we go. So we're going to dive in today about
Our February recap.
and we're going to be talking about something that's impacting every single customer, every shipper, every carrier, every broker, anyone who's involved in transportation.
We're going to give you a glimpse into the market and try to break down what's affecting today's industry.
Yeah. And I think the first big thing is spot versus contract.
Spot versus contract.
So what do you think, Carl?
Well, right now what's happening is carriers are chasing the money. And what that does is it tests relationships, right? We have contractual obligations that we're trying to fulfill, but having these drivers who have, let's face it, been starving for the last 2.5 years, chase the money, really make us ask some tough questions of ourselves and of our customers as well.
And of our networks, right?
And of our
We're
networks.
putting a lot of pressure on our network right now. We're holding our rates as much as we can, but we understand this is a commodity-based market, right?
I know that there's this big push, to chase spot market freight, but what we really should be doing is looking at long-term strategies. The days where we can chase the bottom dollar or the lowest rate, I feel has kind of disappeared, and we need to, look at long-term strategies, lock in capacity at higher numbers, and really have that visibility moving forward.
Yeah. I think it's less about rates, it's more about sustainability.
That's it. Exactly.
I think it's the companies that figure out how to build flexible and fair contracts are the ones that are really gonna succeed in this marketplace.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think everyone's trying to win, whether it's drivers, whether it's our customers. They just want to establish a fair market value for what they're putting out.
It's gotta be a true partnership.
It's got to be
It's
a
the only
partnership.
way this works. I can't stress this enough, but the true cost of service failures, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
And I know you know better than anyone else, what's that look like?
Well, you're chasing the cheapest dollar, right? Cheapest rate, and when you look at the total supply chain, it doesn't work like that, right? We have fines, we have, planning and scheduling, and all these different added costs that happen when you just don't have a good provider, that I think chasing the low cost provider is a thing of the past.
Yeah.
With networks being as intricate as they are, with late night appointments, with, just on time, service requirements, just in time, whatever it might be, the cost of chasing that low cost provider is way more than that $25 or $50 you're saving.
Well, you risk a production line going down.
And that could be thousands of dollars, like when you're talking about the auto industry.
Yeah. So the big question is, where do we go from here?
So we can't be in reaction mode. We need to find strategic partnerships and long-term planning, long-term visibility. We need to have as much notice as possible.
I don't think people realize the amount of notice you can provide greatly impacts our ability to plan accordingly.
I know we've negotiated a lot of contracts right now just because of that long-term visibility where, we're $700 to $800 under spot market, right?
Oh, we can plan for it.
But that is
We can try to get our guys back, we can make rounders, we can plan ahead.
capacity is the new commodity.
It is. I think one thing we should do is probably close off last week's topic, which was the Supreme Court, because we finally got that ruling.
And it was like the crystal ball. We knew what was going to happen,
And
right?
it got struck down, I think it's 6-3, right?
6-3, yeah.
And so tariffs ruled in Dalilah,
Yeah.
right?
So the new introduction was a 10% tariff that's going to be in place for 150 days.
Right. And then I don't know what happens at that point.
Correct. When you're shipping a container, it takes 45 days to hit the shores.
Yeah.
Tariffs were actually removed on February 24th at midnight. So in 45 to 60 days, I feel like you're going to have an influx
Oh, there
of
is.
container shipping.
There's going to be a wave. All the Canadian
To the
ports, all the
ports,
US ports are going to be rammed.
So again, what that means to me is there's going to be a flood of freight in the marketplace.
Yeah.
There's going to be volatility again because capacity is so low and freight's going to.
And that's going to further
And that's going to
push
further increase
capacity. Yeah. These tariffs kind of fall right into Dalilah's law, which is, further going to cause strain on capacity. Because what that law basically states is anyone who's a non-US based citizen, or if you're on some sort of a temporary visa, you're not going to be allowed to have a CDL, commercial driver's license.
The impacts of that are going to be huge.
They say upwards of 20% of the current drivers in the States are immigrants holding a CDL that now is going to be revoked. If this law gets passed, but again, it's being pushed through Congress right now, and Trump's, saying he's gonna sign it. If that gets passed, we're not talking about a blip in the supply chain. This is a fundamental change to trucking. So the takeaway for shippers, I think, is simple. If this law moves forward, risk management, capacity strategies, those are gonna matter way more than we shop.
Yeah, visibility is paramount.
Right. I would say the move right now is pretty simple. Stress test your network, lock in reliable carriers, reduce your spot rate exposure if you can, and if the market flips, the reset's gonna happen fast, and if you wait, it's gonna get very expensive.
I think diversify your portfolio as much as possible. I know we've talked about that before, but it's time to start building out your transportation network. I think transportation networks are only as strong as the relationships that you build.
Relationships are key.
Yeah.
We've always said that, and our company was built on relationships. Right?
That's it. If you're a shipper, ask yourself, are you buying freight or building a network?
If you're a carrier or a broker, are you chasing today's rate or protecting tomorrow's position? That's the state.
That's the state of freight. Thank you guys for listening. Give us a like, a follow, a share.
www.isgtransport.com.